On the morning of June 3, 1985, in a quiet oncology clinic outside Atlanta, a woman named Katie Yarbrough lay down under a machine she knew well. The room smelled of clean linoleum. The technician stepped out. The machine hummed, and something slammed into her chest like a bar of red-hot iron. She came off the table, telling anyone who would listen, "You burned me." The machine's console disagreed. It reported a treatment so small it barely registered. Over the next 2 years, that same model of machine would burn 5 more patients in 3 states and 2 countries, and kill at least 3 of them, while its maker kept explaining, politely and in writing, that what the patients felt was impossible. The machine was called the Therac-25, built by Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, a linear accelerator that fired beams into tumors and was, by the numbers, a triumph. 1 machine, 2 weapons, a gentle electron beam for shallow cancers and a punishing X-ray beam driven by a current roughly 100 times stronger, tamed by a metal target that sat between the beam and the patient. Its predecessors had hardware interlocks, physical fuses and switches that made certain deadly combinations impossible, the way a deadbolt doesn't care what the doorman believes. The Therac-25 was modern. The company removed the hardware and gave the safety job to software. Old code carried forward from the earlier machines, written largely by one programmer nobody would ever name. The company checked the machine after Katie Yarbrough's burn and found nothing wrong. Impossible, they said. She went home to a body that never worked right again, and the machine went back to work. 5 weeks later, in Hamilton, Ontario, it happened again. A patient burned deep in the hip while the console shrugged. Engineers flew in, adjusted, reassured. In December, in Yakima, Washington, a woman developed burns across her hip in strange, neat stripes, like something had been stamped onto her. Letters went back and forth. The company wrote that an overdose was not possible, and that no accidents like it had ever happened before. Both halves of that sentence were false, and the machine kept treating patients on schedule. Then came Tyler, Texas. March 21st, 1986, the East Texas Cancer Center. A man named Ray Cox, in for a routine follow-up treatment after surgery on his back. That day, the video monitor in the control room happened to be unplugged, and the intercom happened to be broken. So nobody saw him, and nobody heard him, when the beam hit him like an electric shock. He tried to get up. The beam fired again. On the console, a message appeared. Malfunction 54. No manual said what it meant, and the dose display said he had received almost nothing. Ray Cox left the clinic, burned deep at the spine. He lost the use of his legs, then his voice, then everything else. He died that September. The clinic called the manufacturer, who once again could not make the machine fail, and once again suggested it could not have been the machine at all. Treatment resumed. 3 weeks after Ray Cox, on April 11th, a 66-year-old bus driver named Verdon Kidd lay in the same room for a routine treatment to the side of his face. Same machine, same operator, and then the same 2 words on the console, malfunction 54. He died within weeks, the first person on record ever killed by an overdose from a radiation therapy machine. 2 men, 1 room, 21 days. This is where the story turns, because of one man who refused the official answer. Fritz Hager was the hospital's staff physicist, and the dose numbers he worked out from the burns made no sense. Not twice the prescription, not 10 times, but something like 100 times. So he and the machine's operator locked themselves in with the Therac-25 after hours, night after night, and did the least glamorous thing in engineering. They typed. The same screens, the same keystrokes, over and over, and they found it. The trigger wasn't a part wearing out. It was speed. The operator was fast enough to make a typo, notice it, and fix it in under 8 seconds. Type the wrong beam, arrow up, correct it. And the machine, mid-thought, kept the correction on the screen and the mistake in the beam. Programmers have a name for this, a race condition. 2 parts of a program using the same information at once and colliding. Correct the setting within 8 seconds, and one part of the software saw the fix, while another had already moved on. The result? The full-power X-ray beam fired with no metal target in its way, roughly 100 times the intended dose, while the console calmly reported an underdose and invited the operator to press P and proceed. Here is the detail that makes it a postmortem. The same bug lived in the older Therac-25 in the same code for years. Nobody died, because when it happened, a hardware fuse simply blew. The bug was never new. What was new was removing the only component that had been quietly telling the truth. After Hager's discovery, there was no more impossible. Regulators in 2 countries stepped in. The machines were ordered fixed, and while the paperwork crawled, a 6th patient was overdosed in Yakima in January of 1987 and died that spring. In the end, the fleet was retrofitted with exactly what had been removed. Hardware interlocks that don't take the software's word for it. The investigation that followed became the most taught case study in software engineering, not because the code was unusually bad, but because everything around it was ordinary. A company that trusted its console over its patients. Error messages so routine that operators pressed proceed by reflex, and hospital after hospital reassured in writing that what they were seeing could not happen. The lesson of the Therac-25 is not that software fails. It is that the failure had been announcing itself in plain English from the very first morning. The machine's error messages were cryptic. Malfunction 54 meant nothing to anyone. The patient's error message was perfectly clear. You burned me. For 2 years, the machine was believed and the people were not. It took a physicist with a calculator and a technician with fast hands to prove that a human being was the more reliable instrument. The official verdict was written by the investigators, but the postmortem writes itself. The only question is whether anyone reads it before the next one.